So I was already on my way home, kind of walking away from the spot where I was filming, and I realized that I forgot one very important thing that I wanted to talk about. And it's something that really translates into etiquette in a direct way. And that's the mindset of a steelheader. So I think that it took me, I would say, about 2.5 seasons of fishing for steelhead to realize this. And I'm passing it on as just friendly advice. And that's the fact that steelheading is not a meat fishery. If I add up all the gas and tackle and license fees and derby entries that I spent chasing these fish over the last 3 years, and I divide that amount by the number of hatchery fish that I've caught, it turns out that my steelhead cost somewhere between $200 and $250 each. So it really isn't a meat fishery. I could have 3 times as much good fish if I were to go to the supermarket. Steelheading is about getting out to the river and having fun. It's good for the soul. It's sort of a mental recuperation. For me, it's been a great way of dealing with all these extra stresses that COVID has brought with it. And if you get into this frame of mind where, you know, it's like a cake, and most of the cake is the fishing. Catching one, that's just that little bit of icing right at the end. If you get to a state of mind where you're out there to fish and explore and be outdoors, and it really doesn't matter that much whether you catch one or not, then it's so much easier to be nice to other people and to not be bothered by it. If somebody low holes you, or they fish too close, or they're loud and they splash around in the river when you're trying to be super quiet, if you're out there just to have fun and you realize that everybody else is out there for the same reason, they're not meaning to be mean to you, they're just out there to have fun as well, and that alone goes a really long ways to better all around etiquette. So yeah, take it for what it is. Steelheading for me is it's a joy. It's a part of my life. I hate to give up for any reason, and I hope you feel the same, and I hope this fishery is good to you. Good luck out there. Hello there, and welcome to another episode on Peter Herman Adventures. If you clicked on this video, you already know what I'm going to talk about. To tell you the truth, this is a video that I've thought about a lot lately, and I wasn't even sure I wanted to film it because I think it's kind of a controversial topic, and I think no matter what I say, somebody's going to disagree with it and give it a thumbs down and leave me negative comments. Well, I'll take my chances, I guess. Etiquette for steelhead fishing is not universal. It's not exactly the same for every person, and it's not exactly the same for every river. So, you know, you have to be flexible and take these things with a grain of salt. And also, whatever advice I give out today, you know, this video is not about me telling somebody how to fish. This is for people who are somewhat new to steelhead fishing. And steelhead fishing is a subculture within general angling. You know, it's almost kind of a secret world, and it's not really obvious what the expectations are when you first show up to a river like this. And so that's what this video is about. This is to provide new people with some information that maybe will allow you to enjoy yourself a little more out there, and not worry about whether you're doing anything wrong or whether you're gonna make somebody else grumpy. I think in this video I'm just gonna try and explain how to have a great time at steelheading, and it really is. It's a wonderful time. I hear it a lot on the internet that you know, people think this fishery has been ruined. You know, the river isn't the same as it used to be. Well, I wasn't around 20 or 30 years ago fishing this river, so I really wouldn't know. But when you go by the statistics that the government gives us, the fishing effort on this river has been relatively constant since the 60s. There has been a fairly sharp decline in fish numbers just over the last 3 or 4 years. So I don't know. This is something I can't really comment on. Is, you know, has this river gone to crap? Well, I don't know. I really have a wonderful time steelheading. It isn't as crowded as everybody makes it out to be. Yeah, some of the runs that are 2-3 minute walk from a parking lot, yeah, those runs are crowded. But I'm here today, mid-river, midday on a weekend, and there isn't another angler in sight. So take all that complaining for what you want to take it for. In my opinion, there are 3 aspects to steelhead fishing etiquette that are important. And some of those things, you know, there's a difference between etiquette and ethics. Etiquette is what you do to get along with other people. Ethics is what you do because it's morally right. It's because that's a kind of a belief system that you have. And etiquette and ethics in steelheading kind of blend one into the other, and it's really difficult to distinguish between the two sometimes. So I think there are 3 components that are important to it. 1 is respect for the fish, 2 is respect for the environment, and 3 is respect for the other people on the river. And I'm going to cover all those things as briefly as I can, because I don't want this video to be a half an hour again like some of my other ones. So let's start with respect for the fish. Steelhead are multi-year spawners, so a lot of them will survive the first time they come back into the river, and they'll head out into the ocean again. So it's super important that these fish be treated really well and really gently to reduce mortality from catch and release. Many of the fish in a heavily pressured river like the one I'm at today will be caught several times during their time in the river. They spend, I think, probably 2 or 3 months in the river altogether spawning, and many of these fish will take a hook several times. They have small brains. They forget that they've been caught. And so it's super important that they be treated really gently. And there are a couple of different things you can do to make sure that happens. Number 1 is keep them wet. So when you finished fighting a fish, that fish just gave an all-out effort, and the last thing you want to do is take that fish out of the water, so now it can't breathe, can't get oxygen into its blood. So steelhead really shouldn't come out of the water at all. When you land them, it should be sort of calf deep or knee deep water, so that they don't have a chance to bash their head against any rocks. And just cradle that fish a little bit, tail it with your hand and cradle it, take the hook out, and off it goes. If you really need pictures, then have your buddy ready with a camera, so that all you have to do is just lift that fish out for 1 or 2 seconds and put it right back in, and off it goes. If you really want to do your fish a favor, then get one of those soft cradles or a big landing net that's rubberized and won't take the slime coat off the fish. And in my opinion, that is the safest and most fish-friendly way to land a steelhead. But you know, it's steelheading, you tend to move around a lot, and a big net is cumbersome to carry around. So I carry a net sometimes, especially when I'm going to spots where it's rocky and I know it'll be difficult to land a fish. But oftentimes I go without a net and I just tail the fish and take it from there. So that's respect for the fish. Another thing you can do is have heavy enough gear that you don't need to totally exhaust that fish in order to land it. So if you're fishing with like a 6-pound leader, 8-pound leader, you have to be, you know, you have to fight that fish for a long time to get it tired enough to land it successfully. So maybe going with a 10, 12, or even 15-pound leader in heavy and dirty water is better for the fish. So that covers respect for the fish. Baby them, treasure them. They really are they're a special fish, and I can't say that there are many rivers in British Columbia where the steelhead runs are getting better and better. All the runs seem to be in some state of stress, and certainly catch and release doesn't help that many. So we have to play our part to make sure those fish will be here for generations to come. Second on my list, respect for the environment. And you know, obviously, if you've watched any of my videos, littering on the river drives me crazy. We're all drinking out of paper straws now from the restaurants because possibly a plastic straw might have a 1 in a million chance of ending up in the ocean. Thing is, anything you drop along the river, whether it be a tiny piece of leader or that spent row bag or your cigarette butts, all that stuff guaranteed ends up in the ocean with the next high water. So it's super important that, you know, when you tie your knot or tie up some wool, you take that stuff, you stick it in your pocket. Another thing is shoreline vegetation. I see this a lot. People modify the shoreline vegetation to make some of the spots easier to fish. So if there are bushes in the back and or there's a little tree in the way, people take a knife out or a little handsaw out and they cut them off to make that spot easier to fish. What you have to realize is that that shoreline vegetation is really important in the summer for moderating river temperatures. So the less shade the water gets, the hotter it gets, and that makes survival for summertime salmon runs and steelhead fry and salmon fry a little bit more difficult. So it's not just one thing, one time, right? You have to always think about, if I do this, well, what if 10,000 other people do the same thing? It leads to an amount of damage that is definitely a factor. So that's my take on it. Be kind to our rivers, respect them. Now, last on the list is respect for other people. And if you've spent a couple of years salmon fishing on this river or another one, then you have to realize that fishing etiquette for salmon is different from fishing etiquette for steelhead. And the main difference is that for steelhead, most people move. So they'll fish a section of water, move down a bit, fish another section of water. And typically, the river is split up into kind of runs. So a run is just a section of water from one rapid to the next. So you'll have a fast water, then something a little bit slower, maybe walking speed, like what you see here, you know, behind me. And so typically what you want to do is you want to start at the top of the run and slowly work your way down the run. And if you show up to a run and there are already a couple of people fishing there, you definitely don't want to start fishing below those people. It's kind of like getting in line at the supermarket. The line starts at the top of the run. So when you show up and the pattern is full, there's already 3 or 4 guys fishing there, maybe you need to sit down and wait for a few minutes until everybody moves down and you have room to start fishing at the top and then follow everybody else down. If you want to fish that run again, you can walk back up the shoreline and fish that run again. And it's called low-holing. Low-holing is when you start below another angler that's already fishing there. And it's very, very poor etiquette. It'll make people grumpy. I have a story somebody shared with me online. It was somebody who watches my YouTube channel, and he wrote me that, you know, he'd fallen in the river a couple times that day. Then he showed up at a pool, started fishing. 3 guys showed up and started fishing just downstream from him. They caught a fish, and it just, you know, it sent him over the edge. Those guys probably didn't know they were doing something wrong, which is why I'm making this video, because, you know, I want to inform people that it is something that's an expectation, is that you start upstream from other anglers. He lost it. He threw his gear in the river. The reason he wrote me is, he said, "This is where my gear is. You can go get it if you want it." Well, I went up there with my friend Clayton, the aquatic monkey, and we looked for the gear, but the water was just too murky. We found a small spinning reel, but that's it. The rest of it was lost to the river. But that's what it leads. Poor etiquette can lead to people getting really upset, and low-holing is by far the #1 thing that you can do to make people upset. So don't do it. pretty simple. And there are complications. So sometimes people will do what's called fence posting. So fence posting is what there's somebody coming. Fence posting is when you stay in one spot and you fish that spot. And so when you have everybody sort of moving down river slowly, fishing as they go, and there's one person right in the middle of the run staying put, being a fence post, it makes things kind of difficult. So don't get mad at the person that's fence posting. You know, there are people like me. I work construction all week. When come the weekend, do I really want to be hiking all over the place? No, sometimes I would just want to stand there and relax and fish. And so, but when I do, I'm very gracious about letting other people fish past me. You know, when I see somebody coming down, I'll pull my line, I'll take a couple steps back, and I'll say, hey, fish on through. So that's good etiquette if you want to be in one spot. And you know, sometimes you get a bite, right? And you know there's a fish there, so why keep moving? You want to stay put, you want to try that fish a few times. Maybe you want to retie and try a different lure, a different presentation, see if you can get that fish to bite. So don't blame people for staying put in one spot. There are a few different reasons, you know, that they do it. So I think communication is key. When you show up to a run, somebody's already fishing there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, hi, how you doing? Are you working your way down? Are you working your way up? Mind if I start just above you? If it's a pool and it looks like, you know, in a pool people generally stay in one spot and fish different sections of it. And you show up to a pool, there's somebody already there, but it looks like there's lots of room. Just talk to them, ask, hey, is it all right if I stand over there and fish with you? And 95% of the time people are saying, well, yeah, go ahead. So communication is key. You really got to open up and speak up, and maybe you'll make some friends. I'm going to make a few casts. I fished this run already, but it never hurts to do another cast. Dry lines don't catch fish. One other thing I wanted to cover is how to deal with people who are fishing at a different speed than you are. So when you show up to a run, generally the pace is kind of the same. Everybody makes 4 or 5 casts in one spot, you know, cover the different sections of river, and they take a couple of steps downstream and make another 4 or 5 casts, and so on. So the pace of moving down river is actually quite slow. But occasionally you get, I see a lot of these younger guys, they want to just blast through every run and cover 10 miles of river in a day. So instead of doing 4 or 5 casts and 2 steps, they'll do 1 or 2 casts and then 2 steps. Or they'll make 1 cast and 2 steps, and they move down the river, you know, quite quickly. And it becomes kind of an issue, like when somebody's speeding like that, you're always catching up to people and they're always wanting to pass people. And I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but again, there needs to be communication. If you're one of those speeders and you catch up to somebody, just speak up and say, hey, can I, you know, pass you, or can I leapfrog you, or can I fish by, or can I fish through? And again, realistically, 99% of the guys out there will say, yeah, go ahead. And they'll chat a little bit, and then everybody's happy. It's if you don't ask permission, I think that's where feelings get hurt. All right, so this is the 3rd take that I'm making about the portion of this video that deals with internet etiquette. And I'm having a hard time summing up my thoughts and my feelings on it exactly, so don't get mad at me. If you don't agree with what I have to say, then mention it in the comments. I'm always happy to have friendly discussion about these things, and you know, make your opinion heard. Write a comment below this video. I encourage you to. Just don't be rude. So yeah, internet etiquette. It's a very interesting one to me because my videos feature this river, the Vedder River, quite a bit. That's the one I most commonly fish. And it's a river that is very well known in this area and even other regions of the world. So the Vedder River has been the subject of various fishing shows and documentaries, magazine articles since the 60s. And since the internet came about, there have been literally hundreds of videos about this river. So if you do a deep dive on YouTube, there are hundreds of videos out there already that name this river, that show fish being caught on this river, and really there is no secret. There is no secret spot, there is no secret fishery. This is the one that everybody comes to. And so I really don't feel like I'm doing anything wrong by naming this river. But, you know, I end up sounding like I'm defending myself just talking about it. In general, when you're posting things on the internet, you do not want to name river names. So there are at least a dozen small rivers within easy driving distance of me here. And I would never name those in a video. I only name this one that everybody already knows and everybody already talks about. And what happens is when you post internet content from a small and less known river, it just puts extra pressure on that river. And that river may not be able to handle the extra fishing pressure and the extra traffic. So just, you know, keep that in mind when you're posting stuff. Maybe the name does not need to come up in the title. The other thing is posting pictures with background. So on the Vedder River, most of the anglers that come to this river have explored it for several years and they know it very well. And they can place a picture with very minimal background. So this video here shows a few trees in the background. I would bet half the people watching it already know exactly where I'm at. So if I were to post a picture or a video of me catching a fish here, the next day there will be an extra 4 or 5 people fishing this spot. And you know, an extra 4 or 5 people is all it takes between having a quiet spot and having a very busy spot. So that's why when you're posting pictures on the internet, you want to be careful about posting backgrounds. You can blur out the background, or you can take a picture that only shows a bit of water, or you can just not post your fish. I mean, for me personally, that's what I choose most of the time. Like during the salmon season, I probably don't catch quite 100 salmon, but it's, you know, it's somewhere in that number. And I post maybe 1 or 2 pictures online. That's enough. Same thing with steelhead, you know, like this, most good steelheaders are quite secretive. I go so far as, like, if I'm killing a fish, I don't leave blood on the rocks. I don't want to be giving out my spot. I don't want to be showing people that there are fish here to be caught, and I definitely wouldn't want to share that information with 5 or 10,000 people online. So yeah, that's the internet for you. We live public lives, we like to show off, and we like, you know, getting those likes on YouTube. That can be kind of an addiction in and of itself. So internet etiquette. Again, I'm not telling anybody what to do, how to fish, how to live, but keep it in mind. If you post background and if you name rivers, those rivers will, and those spots will see extra pressure. So keep it in mind when you post stuff online. Again, thanks for watching. See you next time.